Hello and welcome to the True North Show. I am your host, Megan North. Today, I am thrilled to welcome back to the show Beth Lewis. Beth is a holistic coach, mother, and business owner who integrates science and soul to empower mothers and families to heal at a cellular level, creating lives of freedom, vitality, and deep connection. Her work is not just theoretical, though, it is deeply rooted in her own healing journey. Beth has walked through life's most challenging terrain and come out the other side with an inspirational story, a powerful toolkit, and an unshakable passion for helping others to do the same. Through breathwork, sound healing, wellness coaching, NLP, and the science of psychoneuroimmunology. Is that right? Yep, psychoneuroimmunology.
Psychoneuroimmunology.
Immunology.
It's a big word. Or PNI.
Yeah, PNI. Which explores the profound connection between the mind, the nervous system, and the body. Beth guides women to reduce cortisol levels, regulate their nervous system, heal their inner child, and experience transformation that is real, measurable, and lasting. Because this is not woo-woo, this is evidence-informed, results-driven work that ripples through relationships, health, and everyday life in ways that clients feel deeply and immediately. Beth works with women through one-to-one coaching, breathwork, and sound healing sessions, couples work, corporate wellness, and the retreats and empowering events she creates for women, including the retreat work she and I have built together. Her mission is simple but profound: to help communities feel calmer, more present, and more connected to who they really are, not just for themselves, but for the generations that follow. Beth plays a really big role in my life as well. So she's my business partner, my bestie, and a major sponsor of this show. So welcome back to the True North Show, Beth.
Oh, my heart is so full listening to all of that, darling. Thank you. Honoured to be here as always.
You're welcome. So for the audience, the episode's going to be a little bit different to my usual episodes. I don't think that I'll be sitting here interviewing you per se.
You never know where this is going to go.
Exactly. Because you and I have recently run a retreat with 8 incredible women, and there was just so much wisdom that came out of that weekend. So we, want to take this opportunity and this platform to just share it with everybody, and what we've also just learned from the women, but also just about ourselves as well. So it's going to be more of a conversation, really, isn't it? Hello and welcome to the True North Show. I'm your host, Megan North. I am a purpose finder, mental health professional, and guide for those ready to return to who they truly are. Here, we explore what it means to live a life led by purpose, alignment, and deeper inner truth. Through real conversations, powerful reflections, and soul-led strategies, we'll uncover the stories, tools, and insights that help you navigate life's crossroads and find your own true north. So whether you're in the middle of a transformation, seeking clarity, or just curious about what's next, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Your path starts now.
Beautiful. Yep.
Yeah. All right, so let's start with the inner child work.
Oh, straight in. Love this.
So for someone watching today who has never heard of the term inner child before, how would you explain it and what it is? And also, what does the science of PNI tell us about why that unhealed inner child can show up in physical symptoms in the body?
Oh, love that. I love that question. So that could be an entire conversation in itself. So I'll keep it as brief as possible.
No, don't.
Go for gold, she says.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a really big question. And I think it's one of those terms, inner child, it's kind of like the buzzword purpose, find your purpose, and shadow work. And there's all these terms being thrown around on Instagram and, on people's reels and stories now. And I think certain people people who've never heard these terms can get quite overwhelmed and go, what is this? Is this
Yeah.
witchcraft? Is this, you know, is this a cult? Is this some random religion I'm going to be pulled into? You know, I think people, you know, that have never heard it can be quite confronted by it, or kind of go, what is this crap? You know, like they
Yeah.
just don't, yeah. And fair enough, because, yeah, it doesn't make sense at all until you actually get in a room or have a conversation with someone who can actually just break it down.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it is quite simple, complex but simple, right? The work is complex, but
Yeah.
what is actually quite simple. And that is that we were all children once. It really is that simple. We were all children once, and we're still that person. You know, you're still little Megan in many ways. I'm still little Beth in many ways, or little Elizabeth, as my mother would call me. Elizabeth, if I'm in trouble. But yeah, we all have this little person inside of us that drives how we show up in the world. And, you know, especially for those children who aren't fortunate enough to have their needs met, you know, some kids go through, or many kids, let's be honest, go through quite severe trauma in their lives when they're growing up. You know, their mental, physical and emotional needs, all three or one or two of those might not be met. But also some very simple things that we can go through as children that pretty much everyone can relate to, is that we're simply raised by different generations and they're all doing their best, right?
Yep.
So, you know, if we think about the grandmothers and grandfathers that were raising kids, and then, you know, the baby boomer generations, and then the generations coming through now, everyone's doing their best with the resources they have available, the most, emotional intelligence that they have at the time, based on their own upbringing and their belief systems and what they've been told is the right or the wrong thing to do.
Yep.
You know, I remember so many times, here's a perfect example, I think, for someone who's really trying to wrap their head around this. My own, you know, mum or different people that I was listened to, especially baby boomer generation, not bagging you guys, just observation if there's anyone watching in this age bracket. But, you know, once again, we're all just doing our best based on what we know, right? But yeah, I remember certain times when, you know, my sisters would be having children or friends or whatever, and people of that generation would be saying things like, oh, you can't, don't spoil the baby, don't run to it every time it cries, you know, that they learn how to manipulate you so fast if you run to them every time. Like, that's just one little example. And based on science and research and so many years of therapy and observations and all the things now, you know, that's actually proven to be complete incorrect information. That's misinformation. And the way we are taught now as parents is you cannot spoil a baby. You know, they've really termed all of these different stages of parenthood in so many different ways now, that we're literally taught when we're having children, you know, it's our absolute job to show up and work on creating a secure connection with your child. You cannot spoil a baby. It doesn't matter if they sleep on you in your arms. It doesn't matter if they're not in their cot for a nap, all of that.
Yeah.
You know, the cry it out method has been actually banned in many countries because of the detrimental effects and impacts that has had on children growing up and becoming adults. They've actually linked that to, you know, severe depression, anxiety, really intense mental and emotional health issues, et cetera, et cetera. So even, I use the term loosely, little things like that, you know, because most people hear inner child healing and whatnot and think, well, I haven't been through severe trauma. I had a pretty good childhood. But there are certain things unconsciously that are stored in our bodies. This is why I recommend, you know, anyone listening, if you haven't read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, I highly recommend that book. You know, that should literally be in schools from a really young age, right? Not primary school, a bit heavy for that and hard to understand. But, you know, as kids are growing older, maybe like years 11 and 12, like even in universities and everything, it really needs to be explained more. So we actually carry a lot of this stuff with us. And when we become an adult, you know, all of a sudden you're moving through life and, you know, you might realize all of a sudden, oh, I keep attracting the same partner that doesn't listen to me or meet my needs, or you struggle at work. You keep getting the same sort of situations flowing into your life, whether it's career or you're always stuck in money, financial issues, or you're always stuck with health issues. And, you know, as I like to say all the time, as you know, it's like my tagline, I need to trademark it, it's all connected.
Yeah.
So one of the most powerful things to remember is whether it's your health, your finances, your mental and emotional health and physical health, it's all connected, and it can all be so related back to when you were a child.
Yeah.
And a huge part of that, which I'm sure we can dive into, is this came up a lot on the retreat, and of course with the work that you and I both do individually with our one-on-one clients too, is how much these sort of things come up, and you know, our conditioning, what we've learned, our conditioning shows up in life. So how that shows up in our relationships, how do we deal with conflict? How do we deal with emotion? How do we feel safe enough to set a boundary with someone, or does your voice shake, or can you just not say no to anyone? Stuck in people pleasing, you know, all of that, and self-sabotage is a big part of that as well.
Yeah.
So all of our wounds and patterns and things that show up that really don't serve us in life can all be connected back to that. And the inner child work and inner child healing, or whatever term you want to give it, is really working on identifying what that is for you as a person. So, for example, for me, I know that in my life I had real patterns of people pleasing and finding it hard to say no. And that was to my detriment in so many ways, because I'd actually end up getting sick a lot. You know, and then all of a sudden I couldn't do the thing that I agreed to that I didn't want to do in the first place. You know, things like that. It's like, hang on a second, you start noticing these little patterns here, or you want to get your health and fitness on track, but you're on track for a good couple of weeks or even a month or even 2 months, but you always fall off the wagon and emotionally eat or drink or whatever. So so it's highlighting those patterns, like what are they? So the first step is the real awareness around it, and then it's how can we work on that for you and help you create a new version of whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah. And there was a couple of things in there that you said that really resonated too. So, like for me, I'm the youngest of 6, right? And there's 17 years difference between me and the eldest. So my parents were completely different parents when I came along to when they would have been parenting my eldest brother. Like every version of a child gets a different version of a parent, because, you know, I would imagine my fourth sibling, well, mum and dad had already had 3 kids. So then they were like, oh, well, we've kind of got this now. We sort of understand a bit more. And, you know, and then my parents had got older. They've got more wisdom, you know, all of that sort of thing. So it's constant. Was it Peter Crone? I can't remember whether it was Peter Crone that said about that, you know, all your siblings got different versions of your parents. And so the parenting would have been different. So for me, that really resonates. And the other thing too is that, like I had an incredible childhood, like my parents were amazing. All my siblings were amazing. But the funny thing is that I've still needed to work on some inner child things, because I've realized that as a child, then I've added stories to things as I've gotten older, which is really interesting, because when as an adult, then I've looked back and thought, well, that's an interesting story that I've connected to that actual moment when I was 5. And it's really interesting. And actually, when I've gone in and done the inner work and the inner child work, I've realized that it actually didn't happen. So but there's some reason why I've connected something with something, in order to maybe feel safe, or, you know, whatever was happening for me at that time. But it's really interesting. It's just that the inner child work, I think, is you pointed that out, that, like, I mean, I didn't have a traumatic childhood. I had a beautiful childhood, but there were still things in my childhood that when I've gone back, I've wanted to heal and work on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be something that simple. You know, like I've worked with clients before that have been through pretty severe trauma in, you know, like their teens and adult years. But when we've actually gone, you know, this is where NLP is so powerful, like neuro-linguistic programming, going deep into the unconscious and uncovering, you know, these stories, as we call them, right? You know, it's fascinating. One of my clients in particular is coming to mind, and she had been through quite a lot, but interestingly, interestingly, her self-sabotage and all of the issues she was having in her adult life, in her marriage and everything, we ended up linking back to, it was a girl at school that was bullying her. And it was just a couple of little things that this girl said to her that she used to say to her a lot. And, we were like digging in at first, she was introducing all of these big moments in her life. And I'm going, oh my goodness, so much empathy. And she was so convinced that it was these traumatic events. But yeah, when we unpacked it, it was like, wow, this little 7-year-old mean girl in the playground, like that's where these belief systems started, that she was a freak, that she was ugly, that she was fat, and yeah, it was incredible what we could heal by going back to that. Yeah. So yeah, it can be the most random thing. I've had therapists, we've laughed about it too, actually. It's like, oh my goodness, because obviously, I've got a 6.5-year-old little boy, and knowing what I know is amazing. But sometimes I really need to pull myself back and stop myself too, because something big will happen and I'll be like, oh my goodness, he's going to need so much therapy and put all this power into it. But it can be the most random thing that happens at school, or, the thing that happens when he's walking down the hallway and bashes his head, and does create a story around that. It's unconsciously we process things that we don't consciously understand.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's a crazy journey, isn't it? But one thing I want to mention here is, it's Brené Brown, that's right. She says it beautifully. And one of the biggest pieces I learned, which has helped me so much in so many situations and relationships and everything, because I'm sure people can relate to this, there's certain circumstances. So you'll be in a conversation with someone and someone will say something and you'll be triggered by it, right? So you'll have that physiological reaction, whatever that means for you, you'll be triggered by it. And Brené Brown says the best thing you can do in that moment is to stop and actually, before you react, and go, what do you mean, and argue about it, actually use these words. Okay, so the story I'm telling myself is this. Is that correct? Because it doesn't mean that you are incorrect or your truth is not your truth. And I think that's something people really struggle with. I know I definitely struggled with that for a long time. It's like there can actually be multiple truths.
Yeah.
In situations, because we're all just showing up based on our own filters, our own backgrounds, the way we view the world, perception. It's like if you and I go and see a movie together and we walk out, we might walk out with a completely different meaning from what that movie meant, or a book we've read. It's like, oh, is that what you got out of that? That wasn't even on my radar. Yeah. So I think, like if that helps anyone watching this or listening to this, just to remember that when you're dealing with anybody, you're coming from your place and your perception of the world and your values and your belief systems, and the other person you're speaking to is coming from theirs.
Yeah.
So it doesn't actually mean that someone is right or wrong all the time. It means you both have a truth.
Yeah.
Even though sometimes, let's be honest, some truths are pretty hard to swallow.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Right? And some truths aren't really truths, but that's a whole other discussion, right? So in the big healing scheme of things we're talking.
And it's a beautiful example because, often you and I, like when we're working with the women, particularly in the retreats, and then we debrief later and I'll say to you, oh, this was interesting. And you're like, oh, I didn't even pick that up. Or, because we're looking at things differently. I've got a different view of someone as you do. And I don't know whether you've ever seen the meme. It's like a little meme. It's a visual thing of like someone's drawn a 6. So if I drew a 6 on a piece of paper and laid it flat in front of you, for me, I can see a 6, but you can see a 9.
Yeah.
And so I love that as a visual concept, because I can see a 6, you can see a 9. It doesn't mean that either of us are wrong. It's just that your perception of where you're standing, you can see that. And where I'm standing, I can see something different.
Totally. I love that. And I actually love doing little exercises like that with clients when we're together, because if they're really sort of struggling with someone else's viewpoint, right?
Yep.
So this is actually a really great exercise for people to do on their own with friends and everything as well, right? To really, because sometimes it's really important to realize that we obviously all learn and communicate in different styles and ways. It's like
Yep.
at school, you're either audio or visual or highly kinesthetic, which is like you've got to feel things and do things.
Yep.
So yeah, I've been with clients before, and actually I was doing a walk and talk session with one of my mum clients, which was beautiful. I like doing that sometimes if someone's, got a bubby who needs to nap, or where, we just want to get out and do something that's good for them on a few different levels.
Yep.
And one of the examples I gave her of that one, because I didn't have the pen and paper, was I was wearing sunnies that, have that different, like, because they're, polarized and everything. So we were walking along the ocean, so everything looks like a slightly different color on these sunglasses. And she was talking about this horrible argument she was having with her husband, and, he's this and he doesn't understand. And I just said, just put these on for a second. And she put them on, and I'm like, what does everything look like compared to having them on and off? And we actually went through that process, and I'm like, so I'm going to use this as like a little bit of an example of a metaphor around your filters versus your husband's filters. You're looking at the world through different glasses. They're different lenses. So let's break this down.
Yeah.
And yet so powerful, right? It's sort of, I had a counselling session with a couples therapist once in one of my previous relationships, and I love what this therapist said when we were talking about how do you, deal with conflict, and how do you deal with understanding one another and whatnot when you're having an argument. Like, it's really hard. And my partner at the time said, well, you've got to compromise. And he said, actually, no, I don't like that word in relationships, because nobody wants to be in a compromising position. And compromising means compromising something. It means something to you, which then later on can build anger and resentment. And that's actually really unhealthy in a relationship. What creates a healthy relationship and something that's long-term, sustainable and respectful is actually sitting down and having a conversation and respectfully listening to where that other person is coming from. Put on their sunglasses, turn the page around if you've got the 6 or the 9, and you do not stop talking calmly. Like, have a break if you need to. If you're feeling yourself getting super triggered, like, have a break, come back to it. But you do not stop talking until both of you, so if it's you and I can then say, right, Megan, this is how I'm getting what you're trying to explain to me. Is that correct? And we do not leave until you say, yes, that's what I'm saying, and vice versa. And then he said, what actually happens most of the time then is one or both of you is actually more than happy to change your view, because you just didn't understand the driver behind don't do that, or I'm angry at you, or, there's layers.
Yeah.
All have layers. And I think sometimes it's just hard to go there in a moment of just feeling super triggered, because going back to the inner child stuff, a lot of the times it's actually, in the words of Peter Crone, whenever we're triggered, it's actually just shining a light on where we're not free and healed.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so that, exactly, that inner child piece, if you've grown up in an environment where you always saw your mum compromising with your dad, or vice versa, or that sort of thing, then, and if you haven't done that inner child work, then when you're in a relationship and you feel like you've got to compromise, that can often then bubble. I mean, it's quite simple, isn't it, in the sense of the things that happen to us. And if they don't bubble up and if they bubble up and we don't work on them, they're going to continue to bubble up. But if they bubble up and you do the work on it, then it is freeing, because it's like, oh my gosh, it's one thing that I don't even need to think about anymore. Yeah.
100%. A perfect example of this, actually, because I know we covered a lot of this at our retreat, and this is such a big topic, is actually finding your voice, right? So for me personally, obviously, as you know, that's been a big journey with finding my voice and activating my voice, with my sound baths and sound healings and everything. And that was so triggering for me at first. It was a big thing, because when I was younger, I grew up, I was speaking about, you being the youngest of 6 kids and everything. I'm the youngest of 3 sisters, and my sisters are 8 and 10 years older child than me. And I was born into a home, full of noise and chaos. And, there was a lot of things going on in my family that were really emotional and big. And, so I really learnt from a very young age how to be a chameleon, because my little soul was like, oh, well, everyone's got so many big things to deal with. If I make too much noise, or, I couldn't get a word in edgeways anyway, because I do come, not that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. We're all really good talkers, but, just trying to get a word in and be heard in my family was really hard. And I found that even if I did get a word in, I'd be cut off before I could finish what I was trying to say. So I learned how to be a really good chameleon, but I didn't realize how much I actually embodied that for such a long time. And in relationships where that showed up for me, and I didn't realize this was, a me thing until I did and did the work, but it would trigger the hell out of me if I was trying to explain myself to someone especially in a really heartfelt way, and someone would talk over the top of me. I would just get this whole physiological reaction, and especially if it was a partner, it would actually bring up that trauma, because that was actually a really traumatic thing for me, because there were a lot of different events that happened around that as well. So it was really like, oh my God, I don't have a voice, I can't be heard, no one cares what I have to say, and you just get stifled, and my sort of reality, so my filters were telling me that, well, if I speak my truth, I'll get in trouble, or if I speak my truth, I'll get yelled at, or if I speak my truth, I'll get cut off and told me that I shouldn't be feeling that way, or I shouldn't think that way, or I'm stupid, or like that. Those were my things. So overcoming that has allowed me to, oh my goodness, practice active listening as well, in a more powerful way, because I would never want anyone else to feel like that. But also, really understand that that was a wound for me, and that the person in front of me doesn't know that.
Yes, exactly. They don't.
Some people just get excited. They want to share, and they want to, and they might jump in, or, like, it doesn't mean that they're going, oh, Megan, I don't care what you're talking about. Or Beth, I don't, so I think it's just identifying those little things for yourself, going, okay, that is a me thing. And it's perfectly okay to say to someone, oh, darling, would you mind just letting me finish? That's part of speaking your truth, right? Like, you've said it to me before, and I love that, because we both get excited sometimes, and it's like, I think it's a real women thing as well too, right? It's like, we jump everywhere. But like, that's a healthy relationship.
Yeah. And I've said this so many times, but for people who haven't heard it, did you know that the same letters that spell listen are the same letters that spell silent?
I love that.
Yeah. And it's amazing if you just sit back and just listen, the things that you learn about someone as well. And also it helps you to then start to process. And it's funny because, I often laugh at like when you and I are voice messaging or texting, because you're a real sharer, and so you'll send me a huge text and then I just send you a heart.
And that's all I need too.
I know.
It's so funny. It's like, cool, I just want someone to go.
Yeah. And
it's
then
so funny.
Other times, like, my husband will say, are you and Beth like having a competition who can keep this conversation keep going? Because you'll message me, then I'll message you, then.
Oh, I know. I mean, there's always, we could talk forever, right? You could talk forever. I love what you were saying then, because I feel like, the listen silent thing, definitely something that I found, and obviously there's research to, back elements of this as well, which is incredible, around certain people that do feel the need to jump in and interrupt and keep talking, and they can't handle the silence. A lot of those people have actually been through trauma. Like, that's a real, anxiety kind of trait.
Right.
And I definitely know that was me for a while, so I can really relate to that. I was really uncomfortable with silences in conversations or in rooms, or, and it's funny because now, because I am so comfortable, and oh gosh, I love a good silence. I love those silent moments, especially as a mum. I'm like, oh, it's quiet, yes. But yeah, it's a really interesting journey. It was, it was actually when I married my ex-husband, and he was an only child, and he had his two parents, and we would, because my family gatherings, I've got such a big crazy extended family, so my family gatherings are blah, 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 and you really do have to sort of fight to get a word in if you've got something to say, right? So I was used to that, and that was also part of the thing that I was trying to work on for myself. So I actually noticed a couple of things about that on my journey. One of them was, all of a sudden I started feeling really uncomfortable with my family.
Mm-hmm.
Really uncomfortable because, and this is a really important point, I think, and we worked through this with the women at the retreat, and it's something we've both been through personally as well. When you start actually working on yourself and identifying these things, there's an element of loneliness and isolation that can come up first, like going on to a bit of an empowerment, healing, transformative, whatever journey you want to call it for yourself. You're shifting and changing your vibration, and you start noticing different things. So yeah, I would actually notice, I'd even go and meet a girlfriend for dinner and a drink, and I'd be sitting there kind of feeling really socially anxious. Like, I don't know what to say because I'm not that person anymore who used to respond like that or react like that, not respond. And I don't really know who I am right now because I'm trying to figure it out. So I'd actually get a bit like stumped for words, and then something had come out and I'm like, what the hell was that? And then I judged myself for what I said. And so I actually spiraled a little bit at first. And then when I met my ex-husband and his family, his parents are beautiful people. And I remember the first few times we were together, sitting eating dinner or just having a conversation or a drink or whatever, I'd be sitting there like, like just noticing how triggered I was because no one was talking. They were just eating, enjoying their meal. They'd say something if they felt to say
What?
it. They'd just shut up. And I'm like, do they not want to, because all my shit came up then. I'm like, do they not want to speak to me? Do they find me boring? It's interesting. It's an interesting journey, isn't it? Because all of a sudden your inner voice starts going blah, 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 blah. And that goes back to the whole, okay, so the story I'm telling myself is, is this actually true, or is this just highlighting where I'm not free?
Yeah.
So that was a really huge breakthrough for me. And I have no doubt I manifested them in my lives because that was incredible. I all of a sudden, after doing the work, it didn't just happen, but all of a sudden I'd be with them and I would just start really enjoying those beautiful silences and sitting there feeling really comfortable and not feeling that need to fill that space and just enjoying the space.
Yeah.
And I'd go back to my family and I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. I need to lie down. So now, with all the work I've done and everything, I've got that really beautiful balance because I just know who I am and I just show up as me, but it's a journey, right?
Yeah.
It's a journey. So I think be really patient with yourself, for anyone that's listening and going on that journey. It's a journey, and it's so normal to feel really bloody weird at first.
Absolutely. And it's almost like if you can almost be very what's the word? Not particular, but you can be very I don't know what the word is, but precise, no. But if you think, okay, I'm going to start doing some of this really deep work, you can actually go, okay, I'm going to be really particular about who I'm going to spend my time with. How much time am I going to be out as opposed to in? And, maybe even schedule something in your calendar of it's a me day or it's a me night. And then thinking through of when people say, oh, do you want to go out or do you want to do this or that? Be really, really particular about where do you want to put your energy as well, because you don't really know who you are at that time. So you don't want to be compromising a relationship that actually has been around for 20 years and just because you're in this weird space, your friend looks at you like, what the hell is going on? But it's just being considered. That's the word that I'm thinking of. Considered about where you're putting your time and your energy, because you are different and people look at you differently and you start to look at other people differently as well.
100%. Yeah, I love that. It's like, it's a real intentional practice, isn't it? Of showing up in a different way. And That's right. It's Jay Shetty's book, The 8 Rules of Love. And he talks about the difference between, and it's a huge difference, about being alone or being in solitude, like spending
Yes.
time in solitude.
Yeah.
And I so agree with him. Every single person on earth needs to learn, because it doesn't seem to be something that most people are comfortable doing,
Yep.
need to learn to be comfortable in solitude and spend time with themselves, not watching TV, not
Yep.
scrolling, sitting with yourself, taking yourself on a date, whether it's to the beach or a museum or to a movie or out to lunch, and not sitting on your phone. Like, go and be with
Yep.
yourself. And if you're not comfortable enough to do that, and you find that you're one of those people that needs to pull yourself out of that, like if that's really uncomfortable for you, that's the work you need to
Yeah.
do. I know that, when I first started this work, and I've got so many clients that are so similar, right? Which is why meditation actually fails for a lot of people initially, and why
Yep.
breath work is so powerful. Right? So meditation's incredible. It's so powerful. But if you're the type of person who's like, I can't sit still, I'm doing something that actually really moves that uncomfortable energy through the body is so much more powerful to get you to that space of being comfortable with the space.
Yeah.
Pondering is a really big one that one of my beautiful mentors encouraged me to do, and I was so uncomfortable doing this at first. So he encouraged me to do 20 minutes 3 times a week. Just go and sit, preferably in nature. So the ocean is my beautiful thing. So I've got my sit spot that I go to, and I go and sit and just stare at the ocean. And I'm not going to lie, those first few sessions of 20 minutes, it was like, oh my God, I've got so much to do. I could be using this time to be so much more productive, because my big story has been around, I'm a single mum, I'm running a business, I've got so much to do, blah, 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 busy, 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 busy. And it's like, that can all be true. But if you don't create space within yourself, none of us need more time, money, energy, or anything. We need more space. Because when we move from that place, oh my goodness, it's incredible. That's why one of my favorite sayings is, you never find the answer from the place you ask the question, because usually it's from that energy of just being completely overwhelmed and overstimulated and stuck in your stuff. And it's you need to find the space, create that space for yourself.
I remember when I was in between my first and second marriages, and I'd have moments of, I'd sort of do a silent retreat just at home myself. So I'd message my family and say, my phone's going to be off for the weekend. I'm fine. I'm just having a silent retreat. And I'd do all the shopping. And I mean, I lived in a beautiful part of Sydney, but I was like, no, I'm just going to, have a couple of days at home. So I'd come in on the Friday night, and then I wouldn't leave until Monday morning when I'd go back to work. But I wouldn't speak to a soul. Like, I just loved it. Like, it was just blissful. I'd be like, oh, can I do a week of this?
And honestly, that could be someone else's worst nightmare.
I know.
Oh my God, I'm climbing the walls. I've got to actually hear my own thoughts. I can't do this.
It's blissful.
Yeah, I love that. And that is, honestly, that's so powerful. And that shows so much growth and self-love and transformation in itself. So, like, we're not saying you need to go and spend, billions of hours by yourself all the time and, like, remove yourself from society. Like, that's not what we're saying. But to create and carve out those times for yourself, especially when you're on a journey of doing some healing. That is really important. I remember when I was my ex-husband and I just broke up, and we still had co-shared custody of our dogs. So we had our 2 beautiful Hungarian Vizslas, and we'd sort of swap them over every few days. And, I would love my times when I'd be finishing work and it was a Friday or whatever, and that was when I was in corporate, and people would be like, oh, do you want to come for a drink or come for dinner? And I'm like, nope. That same sort of thing, like, nope, I'm going to have a solitude weekend of just being with myself. And I loved nothing more than going and getting my dogs, and lived in a beautiful part of Sydney as well. And I used to do the Cremorne Point walk, and it was so beautiful. I would get home on that Friday, put my activewear on, and I would just walk for like 2 hours, and then go and sit and just watch the sun go down, and just sit and just be with myself. you
Yeah.
know, and go home with the puppy dogs and lay on the couch and,
Yeah.
just have that me time journal or do some breathing or whatever. And yeah, it's incredible for your
Yeah.
nervous system to actually have that break away from people and things and
Yeah.
noise, you
And
know.
not to feel guilty about it either.
Oh,
Like it's yesterday I was doing a coaching session with a client yesterday, and she said she's kind of working through some stuff at the moment with her current work,
mm,
and she said to me, and she said to me, I think I'm going to start to book in a couple of like cheeky days off. And I said to her, I said, well, can we think about the languaging there? Why are they cheeky days off? Because that sounds like that you're doing something wrong. Why can't you just say that you're scheduling a couple of days off? And she was like, you're right. I said, that's the empowering. The empowerment is I'm taking a couple of days off. Whereas if you're saying cheeky, it sounds like you're sort of, oh, I've got to ring in sick, or, it's got that different
yes,
energy to it. Don't feel
and it's
guilty about it. Like step
powerful.
into that power.
Mm-hmm. It
Mm,
is. It's so powerful, right? And that's our language,
yeah.
that we've got to be so aware of. It's
Mhm.
like how we laugh about it all the time, saying, "Oh, I should, I shouldn't." We're
Yeah.
shooting all over yourself.
Shouldering or over ourselves.
And so when I'm with my clients, our swear words are should, shouldn't, try as well.
Yes.
We do or do not. We don't try. So if we don't
Mhm.
want to do something, we say no and we bloody own it.
Yeah.
If I'm with a client and I'm giving them, some different tools, because we've got, millions of tools that we can reach into the toolbox and say, maybe try this, try this. But if they say, oh, I'll try and do that, I'll say, sweetheart, if that tool doesn't resonate with you, just tell me you're not going to bloody do it.
Yep.
And we'll find you something else. And they always have a laugh. They're like, I didn't mean to swear at you. I'm so sorry. Because they know it's a swear word with me. So it's like, yeah, just own it. And that goes back to, I think, especially women with this whole letting people down or burdening people conditioning that has been generational for so many of
Yeah.
us, right? With the whole, oh, but I don't want to burden anyone. Everyone's got their own problems.
Yeah.
It was a huge breakthrough moment for me because what I used to do is if I was going through a really rough time, I would actually completely retreat and, I would label it, like I'm going into my lady cave and, blah, 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 blah. But what I wasn't doing was actually asking for help because I didn't want to burden anyone.
Yep.
I would just be really kind of down by myself. And it was actually a girlfriend that said to me once when we caught up, this was after one of my little moments when I'd retreated, and we were catching up for dinner one night, and I actually did confide in her, and I said, oh, I had a really rough weekend last weekend, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, I really want you to know that it would have been an honor to be there for you. And I was like, oh, like I felt that in every part of my body. And she said, can you please not take that opportunity away from me next time? And I was blown away because I was on such a big journey for myself and I'd never really heard anyone say anything like that
Yeah.
before. And I actually got a bit emotional and looked at her and I was like, wow, but you've got your own things going on and I didn't want to bother you. And she's like, I need to stop you right there. I don't want to hear that. Don't you dare ever wallow and be so down and be in that much pain again on your own. I'm actually really offended that you didn't bloody let me help you. Like she really gave it to me. And I really changed how I was viewing myself. And of course I manifested that whole conversation because I was working on all of that with my mentor at the time, really trying to understand my own patterns and everything. And now, I mean, as you know, like I've been through some big stuff since we developed our beautiful friendship. And, now, my goodness, I have no issue with just sending a voice memo or making a phone call. And if I need help or support in any way, I'm just like, honey, I'm having a really down day today. I just need to get there. And sometimes it's you just need to get it out.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get this out. And I find, these days, my goodness, I move through things so much quicker. We were talking about this so much at the retreat too, right? When you don't resist, you actually just surrender to where you are. And it's like, right, I'm feeling really angry today. This has really made me angry, or this has really upset me, or, I'm grieving, or this, or, whatever it is. Actually sharing that with someone and allowing yourself to go through that process is so healing in itself.
Yeah.
You know, like allow your people to be there for you.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many people are so honoured,
Yep.
you know, because we're
Yeah.
all craving love and connection. At the
Mm.
end of the day, that's what we all want. That's what we're all after.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, allow people to love you and connect with you.
Yeah.
You
And
can't say, I want that, but then push it away, you know?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And most of the time when you ask someone for help or just to assist you or however you want to say it, support, the other person isn't thinking, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't
How
believe
dare
that
you?
Beth has sent me a message today and I've got to listen to it for 5 minutes and then I've got to respond because she's asked me." Like, no. Just and if that is really the response and you're getting that energy from someone, they're not your friend anyway. But
100%.
there's
Find a new
no
tribe, Bill.
but no one, like any time that any one of my family or friends would ever ask me to do anything, I would never sit there and go, "Oh my gosh, are you joking?" I could be like, "Yes, of course. What
Really?
can I do? Tell me." So it's funny that then that expectation is that we put an opposite onto the other person. But why wouldn't the people who love and adore me not respond like that if I
Oh
asked?
my goodness.
It's
So, yeah,
it doesn't make
100%.
sense.
No, it doesn't, does it? And something came up for me when you were saying that because I don't want to confuse anyone here, right? Because I think there's a big difference. I was
A
about
big
to say
difference.
a big difference between that versus there are some friendships or family members or people out there who can be very, very toxic
Mm.
too. So I think maybe let's just quickly touch on that
Yes.
because I think that's a really important thing. There's also healthy boundaries and protecting your energy to a certain point here
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So if I was a friend voice memoing Megan every single day or five times, you know, different obviously if you are going through a really, really hard time, like, you know, let's just be very, you know, wise mind about this. Different times of life, you know, but if you have a so-called friend or frenemy, as they like to call them in Sex and the City, love that term. We you know, we've all had some frenemies in our lives.
Yep.
But yeah, if you've got one of those people that's very demanding of your energy and taxing of your energy, and there's constant crisis and drama and I need you now and now, drop everything you do, and there's this solid 100% expectation on how you need to show up for them in every single moment, that's a problem.
Yep.
Right? So, and you know what? It doesn't even need to be every single moment. If it feels really uncomfortable for you, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And it's okay for you to not feel okay if you're feeling like you're really being taken advantage of or hammered with having to be somebody's professional therapist when you're not their therapist.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So, you know, it's very,
Good
very
point.
different. Like in our case, for example, you know, we're mentors and coaches, but we always have our own mentors and coaches and therapists. You know, I've always got a person, as do you.
Same.
Because we really do practice what we preach.
Yeah.
You know, you can't, especially at big times in your life, you can't figure these big things out on your own. So if you've constantly got, you know, trauma coming up, dramas, issues, conflict, whatever it is, and you're not actually going and seeking professional support for that, that is when it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
You can't expect your friends to be the ones that constantly need to drop everything because you're not willing to go and do the work that you need to do to shift that cycle and stop that pattern for yourself, because that is your cycle.
Yeah.
So I think just, really bringing that to
Good
people's
point.
awareness is really important, right?
Really good point. Really good point. And on that, like we've touched on boundaries in the sense of one of the things that I worked with the women on this and I do with my clients is that I always think that there's two different energies that come into a boundary. So I think that there's either courage or confidence. If you feel like that you have to be courageous by putting a boundary in place or saying no to someone, there's probably you're worried about what their response is going to be because you feel like you need courage, which then I think you need to start to look at that relationship. But if you've got confidence, then it would be, I'm going to put this boundary in place. I'm prepared for whatever the response will be. then the response and the relationship has probably got a lot of respect around it. So there's that distinct difference, of that courage versus that confidence of, oh my God, I'm really worried if I say no to someone, what's the response going to be? So if you feel like that, then, the other thing is that your inner circle, like who is in your inner circle, and then who do you turn to for particular things. So, I know for you've got a couple of girlfriends that you're really close to who have got children. Now,
Yeah.
you talk a lot to them about that. I don't have children, so they can give you different support to what I can give you. So when you say you've spoken to someone, or like, I don't get offended. I'm like, well, good, I'm glad that you've spoken to them, because I'm not sure how I would respond. Right? The inner
Exactly.
circle is those different people who are going to challenge you, who are going to love and support you, but also that bring different things into what you need at that time.
100%. Yeah, that's right. And it really is noticing your own triggers around those friendships too, right? Like
Yeah.
you just said, and I love that you said that, like you don't get offended, and vice versa. Like if you say, oh, I caught up with my other bestie, or, this or whatever. And so I don't have anything in me going, oh, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm that person, and
Yeah.
little old me may have.
Yeah.
Because she
Oh,
was
yeah.
quite an anxious attachment kind of style when it came to relationships, because it was like, hang on, oh, what do you mean? Like, why wasn't I invited to that? Or,
Yeah.
not that I'd ever voice it, but I was aware that that was a thing for me. We're talking
Yeah.
a long time ago now, but it's really just, it's really understanding that. And that's going back to the whole question about inner child. If you notice these things about yourself and these triggers coming up for you, that is your little girl, that is your little boy. If he's going, oh, this person just used this tone with me, this person just said this with me, and that's what's triggering you. Like, you can have a boss, for example. One of my clients really had so many issues with this boss, and what we actually put it back to, she didn't realize, but unconsciously this boss reminded her of her mother. Unconsciously, that boss was her mother. So her body, her little girl inside her body, was having this physiological reaction to being in trouble and rejected and told off by this horrible woman who made this face and used this tone. And it's like, who is that? Who is that voice? That voice was her mother. So, it's really just identifying these patterns. And going back to the friendship for a moment as well, it's really so important, and I don't think we can stress this enough when it comes to boundaries, to understand what yours are and
Yeah.
to communicate that with each other. Once again, we loved, all the women at the retreat loved this, right? Because it's not something that people really sit down and do themselves. This is why, gosh, I loved it when I started, working with coaches and everything, which is what, led me down this path in the first place. It was like, God, I want to help people with this. Why aren't they teaching this in schools? Which is, side note, one of my missions now is to, really get so much more of this unconscious nervous system regulation, like understanding more into, communities, so younger people have the opportunity to really understand why they show up the way they do and why certain things bother them and they don't bother their best mate. It's such an empowering thing, and it's so bloody life-changing to understand why certain things might be harder for you than other people. And sometimes it's literally just, as we know, bringing it to your consciousness that you're like, oh, that's why that bothers me so much. So going to the boundaries piece, we obviously tie that when we're working with women to, well, what are your core values? What are your real core values? And one of my biggest one in every area of my life is respect. When I'm in a relationship, money, health, all the things, respect, like that's so, so important to me. That's one of my highest values. And I couldn't figure out for such a long time, because I didn't know what my values were, that when I felt somebody disrespected me in whatever way, shape or form, that would hit me so hard. So hard. And I was not able to respond. I would only react. So just understanding that about yourself can actually be the breakthrough, and just go, oh my goodness, if that's respect, God, of course, if I knew that in those situations, I'd be like, okay, well, Megan didn't mean to upset me. That was just me reacting to her comment about what's her filters and what she believes in. But that was crossing a value of mine that I didn't realize I had. So
So we've really got only a couple of minutes left.
Goes so fast, doesn't it? Oh my goodness, we could just talk for hours.
I had like so many questions that we were going to, and I'm like, we've talked about one thing,
goodness.
which I love, which is so good. It's so
I
good.
love it.
I think while we're talking, I'm like, I think we might need to do a part 2 of this, because then there's lots of other things that we can talk about.
Totally. So. Yeah, we can talk about how
the audience is cheering. Woo!
Illness and, you know, all the things. Yeah, we can go down so many different
We can.
things. Yep.
But I really love that we got to go into that depth about the inner child piece, because I think that that's like such a beautiful start for any woman or man who wants to do some work on themselves. I think that it's a really good first step.
Yes.
And so, you know, people can get in contact with you, with me, with us. You know, please feel free if there's any questions, or particularly anybody's got any comments, then I'm more than happy to hear the comments on that. So totally. Yeah, thank you.
Totally.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fantastic. Thank you for joining me on this episode of The True North Show. I hope today's conversation brought you closer to your own sense of purpose and reminded you of the power you hold within. If this resonated with you, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who's also walking the path of becoming. To continue the journey, head over to megannorth.com. You'll find resources, support, and ways to work with me one-on-one. Until next time, keep trusting yourself, following your intuition, and taking one aligned step at a time. Your true north is never lost. It's just waiting for you to come home.